So everyone, welcome. Let's now, start this review session, okay? Well, as you can see, everyone, we do have, two grammar topics from unit number 6 that we have to cover, okay? And they are here. So the first one is, of course, going to be about, simple and continuous verbs, the differences and their uses, and also we will talk about, participle clauses, what they do, and their uses in general. Okay, let's go with section 1, simple and continuous verbs. Okay, so simple and continuous verbs, guys. And these will be the things that we will talk about them. So we will of course talk about the simple verb themselves, then we'll talk about the continuous verbs, then we will talk about some verbs or specific verbs that are not usually used in the continuous version, and we will also study some verbs with different meanings in the simple version and in the continuous version or form. Okay, so starting with the first one, simple verbs. Simple verbs talk about these three things, okay? It can talk about complete actions, complete events, and complete activities. It can talk about how much something is complete or how many times something happens. And it can also talk about facts and unchanging states. For example, we worked very hard on that project. This shows an activity that is complete. It's done, so the working hard part of the project is done. Okay, so the project is finished maybe, and it just it is like that. So you don't have to give more explanation here. Just say we worked hard means it's done. The activity or the action is complete. But what about this one? How much something is complete or how many times it has happened? You can say like this: we finished half of the exam. Once again, our verb also in here. Sorry, I didn't show it first. Our verbs are in the simple form, okay? They are in the simple form. So, of course, it is going to be very okay, or it's going to be correct. We finished half of the exam. It just means how much of something is done or how much something is complete. So, half of it is done, okay? And it can also talk about facts and unchanging states, kind of the easiest of them all. Like example, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra takes 200 megapixel pictures. This one doesn't change. Whichever unit you have, maybe your friend has one, maybe your father has one. All of them, if they are this model, they will take 200 megapixel pictures. So this is a fact and it's an unchanging state. Okay. Continuing, what about continuous verbs? Now, continuous verbs go in the following categories. The use cases. First, it can talk about incomplete or temporary activities. It can also talk about, or at least it can emphasize activity or duration or repetition of it. And it can also, complain or express surprise when you use it with adverbs like always, continually, constantly, and or forever. Example for the first one, when it's an incomplete activity or when it's a temporary activity, in here it will be, of course, either one. I think both can be used, or yeah, both can be, it can be incomplete or it can be temporary based on where you're going to look at it from. I'm studying Italian at the moment. So yeah, you're not done studying, so it's incomplete and it might be temporary because maybe next term or next year you will start Spanish. Okay, to emphasize activity, duration, repetition, my dog has been barking all day. Now, this one can be about duration because you have all day here. It can also about be repetition, has been barking, so it just shows that it's an activity that is being repeated. Okay. And the last one, to complain or express surprise, you can use it with adverbs like Kudus is constantly making noise when he eats. Now, in here, of course, it's not going to be a surprise, it's going to be a complaint. We are complaining here, and I'm using the adverb constantly in the present continuous tense to do that or to complain, okay? So there's a tip now how to be more polite. You can use the past continuous to be more polite or less direct, which is, of course, always, welcomed. For example, I was wondering if you could allow us to crash here for the night. So I was wondering, just when you say this one, I was wondering, of course, if is also part of it, but when you just say I was wondering, it means that, sorry. Yeah, it just means that you are being polite, okay? You're not being too harsh, you're not being very direct about your request. You're saying it in an indirect way, which is really good. Okay, so it's about past continuous. Okay, so these verbs, everyone, from these categories are never used in the continuous form, or at least if they are used, they're rarely used, meaning that not always. Very, very less. Okay, example. If you have verbs connected to thinking, most of the time we don't use it in ing. For example, believe, despise, know, and recognize. Like, when was the last time you heard believing? When was the last time you heard recognizing? I mean, actually used in the tense as a tense verb, okay, or as a verb, not a gerund or something like that. We don't, okay? We don't use them. Okay, if you have verbs connected to the senses, mostly hear, see, smell, we kind of don't use them in ing. Then you have communicating verbs like astonish, to deny, to impress, to mean, to satisfy, to take, meaning to understand something. Once again, no ing. And the last one in an other category, verbs like belong, consist, and depend, most of the time don't take ing. Okay, but what about the senses? So we have an asterisk here, asterisk, sorry. In here, we do also have more clarification about it. So we can use, or we use, can, the modal verb can, plus an ability verb like hear, see, or smell, or remember, rather than a continuous form. So even if you're talking about an activity or a sense verb that you are, you're doing right now, so you want to make sure that the other person knows this, that what you're talking about is taking place right now. So you cannot use it in the ing. So what do? It's better to use it in this structure. Can plus an ability verb. So instead of saying, hey, I'm hearing you, say, I can hear you. Instead of saying, I'm smelling you, you can say, I'm smelling you. Yeah, instead of that, you can just say, I can smell you. Okay, so all of them are really, really good. Okay, then you have some verbs that have different meanings in the simple and in the continuous
Fully
version.
charged, battery fully charged.
Sorry,
Unplugged charger.
that's my phone. Okay, so what are those verbs? Okay, so the first one will be, of course, weigh. The verb to weigh has two kind of meanings in this case. If you use it as a state, for example, I weigh 200 pounds, it just means that this is your weight. But if you use it as an action verb, so it becomes an activity. I am weighing watermelons right now. Yeah. So this is an activity. Like I'm taking watermelons and I'm putting it the scale, and I'm checking their weight or their mass, whatever you want to say. So yeah, this is an actual activity. You're losing energy by doing it. Okay. Then you have think. Now the first one is an opinion. I think Taylor is the best lyricist of all time, even though it's kind of a fact, but we're gonna say it as an opinion here. But it can also use or be used as an activity, kind of like I'm thinking of. Mhm. Of about no. So just remove one of them. Okay, let's remove of. Yeah. I'm thinking about my future. I'm thinking about my future. So this is an activity that you're doing, you're losing energy, and it's actually a mental process. Okay? Okay, the other verb that most of the time can be used in two versions. One is it's be. So if you use it as a state, it can be talking about a characteristic. Like he is rude, he is happy, or something like that. But when you use it in the ing version, it means that it's behavior. You're talking about behavior, a certain behavior, but it must be temporary. Okay, for example, he's being rude today. He is being. See, being in here is used in the ing. He is being rude today just means that it's not his normal behavior. He is just a little rude today. So not every day. Okay, so how do you make sure that people understand it's temporary behavior? You say it using an ing. He is being rude today. My friend is being nice to me. I don't know, like, for example, what he wants. There are many, many more sentences. Okay, and the last verb is see. So you can use it with this meaning, which means just look, like I see two people, you know. Okay, you can also use it to mean understanding, like to talk about understanding, like now I see why he did that. Just means like now I understand why he did that, and it can also be used in ing to mean meeting or actually seeing a person, right? In a meeting or something, or an appointment or a date. For example, I'm seeing my friend today means that I'm meeting my friend today. Okay, so very, very easy. Okay, so we have participle clauses. Before we go in there, everyone, I'm gonna stop the recording. If you do have any questions, just raise your hand and ask. Good, very good. Okay, so let's now continue, everyone, and check. Yeah, okay. Section 2, everyone. Participle clauses. Okay, so what are they, and how we use it? Okay, let's start. Participle clauses, why do we use them? Okay, so we're starting with why first, okay? We use participle clauses to add more information to sentences. So this is the reason when people say why, just say this. We use it to add more information to sentences. Example, having worked very hard the past few months, she decided to enter the tournament. So my sentence is she decided to enter the tournament. But I just want to add some information and say that, yeah, you have to also know this one. It is also kind of important information. So I'm adding more information in this case. Having worked. So it means that she worked very hard in the past few months. And after working very hard, she has now decided to enter the tournament. So it's just adding information. Okay, so the reason is why we use it to add information. Okay. And participle clauses, guys, we're going to cover in these two ways. We're going to talk about participle clauses after nouns, and we're going to use it, or we're going to talk about participle clauses as adverbials. So one after nouns and one themselves used as adverbials, okay? Okay, let's see participle clauses after nouns. So we use participle clauses after nouns and pronouns like defining relative clauses. Like we can use it like that, okay? Example, we saw a man running down King Street when we came here today. Like if you want, you can even change it to a normal defining relative clause. You can say we saw a man who was running down King Street when we came here today. Okay, so you can say it like that, but you don't have to. So many other grammar books, I mean there are many different sources of grammar. So I'm gonna just take a guess here. I'm gonna say like some grammar books mostly call this especially as reduced relative clauses. Okay, they call it what? Reduced relative clauses. Now, it's kind of the same thing because you are literally just reducing it. You're not saying we saw a man who was running down, you say we saw a man running down. Okay, so this running becomes the participle itself. Okay, continuing. The subject of a participle clause must be the same as the main clause. For example, beaten and bruised, Qudus never showed his face again. Now, we have a participle, three, or sorry, a verb three, or a past participle in here, and also another one in here, right? So who is yeah, who are these two words describing, right? If we check our sentence here or our rule here, the subject of a participle clause or the subject of this clause in here, it must be the same as the main, or must be the same as the subject in the main clause. So our subject in the main clause is kudus. Okay, so it means who was beaten, who was bruised, Kudus was beaten, Kudus was bruised. Okay, so this is just a different way of saying the same thing. Okay, And you also have in the last one, we can form a participle clause when a modal verb is necessary for the full sense of the clause. For example, if you remember in here, this one was a clause, right? We just changed it. For example, we saw a man who was running down King Street, but at that time we could change it. But when you have a modal verb involved for the actual meaning of the sentence, you cannot really change it. You cannot really use a participle clause. Okay, for example, Frozen is a movie that should be watched. Should be watched. Now, should is a modal verb. If we change it like this and say Frozen is a movie watched by everyone, it means that everyone is watching it. So it's done. Why am I saying a sentence, right? But in here, this should is giving us the meaning that it's not watched by everyone, but it's a good idea if everyone watches it. Okay, so should is like giving advice, right? So it's saying, no one is watching it, or maybe not everyone is watching it, but if they watch it, it's good. If they watch it, it's what? It's good. So this is the meaning that should has. It's a modal verb and it has this meaning. Now, since this is a modal verb, we cannot really change it, and we cannot really change the clause into a participle clause because we will lose the information. Okay, we will lose the actual meaning. Okay, continuing. So a tip here, can we use the participle clauses with verbs that are not continuous? Let's see. We can use participle clauses with verbs not usually used in the continuous tenses. Okay? For example, being the only American, I had to leave the town quickly. Okay? So when you have like a verb, see, we can use participle clauses with verbs not usually used in the continuous tenses. If you remember, be was one of those verbs that were considered not to be used with the continuous tenses that much. Okay, so if you have these ones, you can also use them in the participle clauses. So the answer to this question is kind of like a yes. Okay, being the only American, I had to leave the town quickly. You are not going to say I was being the only American because it's not a temporary state. It's not really a temporary behavior either. You are an American, so you are an American. Like, what's the point of saying I was being an American? So, but when you change it and bring it into the form of a participle clause, then it will be much, much better. Okay, being the only American, I had to leave town quickly. It's kind of like saying, because I was the only American, I had to leave the town quickly. Okay? So, what about participle clauses as adverbials? Now, we use a participle clause or participle clauses as adverbials in formal language and in writing. Example, having killed 10 people in 2 weeks, I was confident I could kill 2 more. So when you have a sentence like this, it just, makes it sound more formal. It just makes it sound better. Okay, so as you can see, we're using it, by the way, as an adverbial phrase, which is something that you're going to talk about soon. So just be careful of that. Okay, participle clauses can be used as adverbials as well. Okay, continuing. So participle clauses, when did they happen? So what about this? So this one is all about the time that the action happened. Okay, before the main verb in the sentence. Okay, so when you put it before the main verb in the sentence like this, see, we can make a sentence: killed by the terrorists, he was buried in his own backyard. Okay? But if you do bring in some changes, like at the same time as the main verb in the sentence, it can come in here. The man running behind me got hit by a car. So there are two different ones, of course. It can either be before the main verb, the main verb happens, right? So where's the main verb here? He was buried. So this is our main verb in this sentence, and our participle clause is killed by a terrorist. So, when you check these two actions, which of them happened first? Okay, so it can, in here, of course, the participle clause happened first because first he was killed, then he was buried. Okay, so, it can be before and it can also be at the same time. So, two different times we have for participle clauses. And in here, it's the same one. So the man running behind me got hit by a car. So got hit is one main verb or just one verb, and running behind me is another, what do we call participle clause. So when you had them both together, it's kind of something that happens at the same time. He was running behind you at the same time that he was hit. So yeah. Okay. Continuing. So, what about having done? What does it mean and why do we need it? Okay, we can make it clear that the action in the participle clause happened earlier than the main verb in the sentence by using the perfect form. So, instead of saying just, instead of using the normal participle clause, you can use the what do we call that? The perfect participle clause or the perfect version of it. And it just means that the action that happened or the action that we have inside the participle clause has happened before. Okay, has happened what? Before the main verb, before the action of the main verb in the sentence. Example: having written my essay, I handed it in to the professor. So our main verb action is hand in the essay, right? To hand in the essay to the professor. But you also have another action in your participle clause, having written, so writing the essay. Which of them happened first? 100% that the essay was written first, then you gave it to the professor. Now, you can say it in the normal way as well, but if you use it in the perfect form, it's just more clear. It just makes it clear for everyone to understand that this action happened first and then this action happened after it. Okay? So, another tip: once watched. So how do we use it and what kind of it means? Okay, so let's see. Okay, we can use ed adverbial participle clauses after time conjunctions in formal language. Ed, okay, ed adverbial participle clauses are here, like watched, drunk. So of course, not all of them will be ed, like as the example I just gave, drunk. For example, drunk it doesn't take ed because it's an irregular verb, but you know what I mean. Okay, so we're talking about the past participle version. Okay, sorry. Yeah, we mostly use them, after time conjunctions like once, right? And it is just used there in formal language. If we check the examples, yeah, once watched, Titanic will certainly become one of your all-time favorites. So it's saying that once you watch it or immediately when you have finished watching it, the movie, it will be your favorite, right? So you can change it and you can even bring a sentence like using drunk. You can say like once drunk, let's say entirely, the bottles fill themselves up. Okay, so it means that once the bottles have been drunk entirely, then it starts to fill itself up. So it doesn't need a person, it doesn't need any humans. It maybe the bottles have like some sort of a machine inside them, but they just fill up, you know, by themselves. So this was another example of it as well. Okay. And thank you. Yes. So I'm going to stop the recording. If you do have any questions, just raise your hand. So let's start. Let's continue technically to the next one. Okay. So everyone, Unit 7 grammar now. We again have, I believe, two parts in here. Let me see if I can bring it. Yeah, okay. Section 1 will be speculation and deduction. Section 2 will be about cleft sentences. Okay, so, I hope you can learn it very quickly. Okay, section 1, speculation and deduction. We're gonna talk about will and going to in here, okay? And they are used, of course, to provide certain speculations, okay? Examples or about the uses first. We use will to speculate with certainty about the future. Example, she will become the new president soon. You will see. So I'm very sure. about this, right? I'm certain about this speculation. Okay, another one or the other structure, will have plus verb 3. We use it to speculate about past actions with an effect on the present. Okay, with an effect on the present. Example, he will have finished his dinner by now. Why hasn't he come yet? So the action is like, finishing dinner in the past. That's what's called a past action. And the effect on the present is that he would be here. He would be here right now. He would be with us, but why isn't he? So, that's the effect. Okay, he will have finished. And we use going to for strong predictions based on present evidence. Example, the USA is going to be dethroned by China as the new superpower of the world. Okay, once again, it's a prediction, but it's about, it's based on evidence, right? We have the evidence, like the China economy, let's say, is growing and growing and growing. So based on current evidence, USA might not be the superpower, in the later stages. Okay, continuing. So what about certain deductions? Okay, we use must, of course, and we can also use have got to, but just be careful, have got to will be a bit informal, okay? Okay, let's see. We use must when something is logically true in the present or in the future based on evidence. Okay, so deductions mostly need evidence, by the way. Okay, James has packed up his bags. He must be thinking of leaving. He must be thinking of leaving. So this must be thinking of leaving just tells us that it's something that is logically true. If a person, for example, has packed up the bags, what do you think he's going to be doing? Do you think he's just going to pack the bags and go back to sleep? No, of course not. He might be thinking of leaving. So that's why we're using must, and we're very, very sure of it. Okay, have got to, something is logically true again in the present or the future, same way, but based on evidence once again, but this time, sorry, it's going to be informal. Okay, example, you've got to be earning a lot of salary. No one can buy 5 Lamborghinis. Of course, I can say it like you must be earning a lot of salary, but either way, it's the same thing. You can say you must, you can be have gotta, but just remember that have got to is a bit informal and it's really used a lot among friends. Okay, and the last one, you can use must have plus verb 3 to deduce about the past. Example, the US president left the country about an hour ago. They must have had their meeting in the morning. So must have had is now a very, very strong deduction about the past. You're saying that, if the president left the country about an hour ago, so what about the meeting that he had, for example, with the prime minister? Okay, so of course, if he left about an hour ago, so then that means that they were free in the morning. So if they were free in the morning, maybe they had their meeting at that time. So this is a deduction about the past, and we're using this structure: must have plus verb number 3 or past participle. Okay, so when you're talking about how likely something is to happen, you can use should and may will. Should is something we use it when something is probable because it is expected or it is normal. We can use should in the past, we can use should in the present, and we can use should in the future. Example, he should be home. It's a Friday. Where else could he be? So this is like saying that it's likely that he's at home, right? It's likely that he is home. So, of course, it's a Friday. So this, it's a Friday is the evidence that you need to, support your claim. Like this is the evidence that makes you believe that, something is very likely that it's going to happen or is going to turn out true. But we can also use may well. It can be used when when same. It can be used in the same way as should, but a little more certain. So in case of saying he should be home, he should be home. It if you use may will, it will be the same meaning, but just a little more sure if you want to be. For example, he may well be home. Okay, example, the one that we have for itself. James may well attend the party on Monday. Why? Maybe because his dad is there. Why? Because maybe he has a crush on someone there and he just wants to go there, right? So there are many, many more ways, but it just means it's just a little more sure than your normal should. Okay, so continuing. Okay, possible and unlikely. You can use could, you can use may, you can use might, you can use can. Okay, starting with the first one. Could can be used, may or may not can be used, might or might not can be used to speculate and deduce about the past or in the past, present, and also in the future. Example: 50,000 people could die in the coming month due to a lack of COVID vaccinations. Now, once again, this is not something that is 100% true, but it is a possibility. Okay, it's a what? It's a possibility. So we're going to write it a possibility, or at least we can say it is likely that it's going to happen, right? It's likely that people, are going to die. Like 50,000 people are going to die. So this is just a way of saying that. Okay, continuing. Okay, once again in that category, so the remaining ones, you can use could have plus verb 3 to say something was hypothetically possible in the past. So when you're talking about, hypothetical scenarios or situations in the past, you can use could have plus verb number 3. Example: I could have bought that phone when I had won the lottery, but did you buy it? No, you did not. Okay, so did you buy it? That's the answer. That's the question, sorry. And the answer is no, you did. Sorry, you did not buy that phone, or you did not buy that. So that is why it's hypothetical now. Okay, so you are not winning the lottery every day. Okay, another one is can. You can use it to say something is generally possible in the present or even in the future. Example: you can buy 4K TVs at reasonable prices this time of year. I'm not 100% guaranteeing it, but there is a chance, there's a possibility that if you do go out, if you do go to the markets, and you do go to the I don't know, stores, electronic stores or something, you're gonna find 4K TVs at good prices. So this is a possibility, about the present and in the future. Okay, but what about when it's impossible? Where of course we have can't and couldn't. Couldn't plus verb number one, couldn't plus infinitive means, or it can talk about generally impossible um, things in the past, or it can mean generally impossible in the past. Example: she couldn't win against two people. It was generally impossible for her to win against two other people. Okay, what about can't then? You can use can plus verb number one to, mean generally impossible, but in the present and the future, not the past. Example: we can't finance that project. We can't finance that project. It's too expensive and risky, meaning that we cannot really support it. We cannot really fund that project. This one is impossible in the present, maybe. And again, continuation of it. Can't or couldn't plus have plus verb 3 can be used to mean logically impossible, but in the past. Logically what? Impossible in the past. Example: she can't have done the homework herself. Why are you saying that it was, logically impossible for her to do the homework herself? She was with me all day. So if she was with me all day, I remember that she didn't do it, right? Okay. Another one, can plus be plus verb ing. It just means logically impossible in the present or in the future. Example: James can't be going to the cinema this week or the next one, his mom's sick. Okay, so that's kind of impossible, logically impossible for a person to go to cinema when your mother is sick. Okay, and can't plus be plus going to plus verb one, a very, very awkward sentence. It will be awkward 100% as mentioned here. It will be unnatural as well, but it is technically true, so we're going to mention it as an honorable mention, so don't use it a lot. It means logically impossible in the present or even the future. Example, she can't be going to do her homework this Friday. It's very, 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 very unnatural. Okay? So, and continuation still, couldn't have plus verb number three. It can be used to talk about hypothetical impossibility, but in the past. Okay? She couldn't have come home if it weren't for her brother. She came home, but without her brother, it wasn't possible. So that's why it's hypothetical now, okay? We do have some other expressions before we, go to your questions here. And those questions or these expressions, guys, you just have to learn them one by one. The first one is are bound to or be. Okay, so are, you can just say it be bound to plus verb number one. It means certain speculation. When you're sure of it and you're speculating on a very certain level, you can use this sentence. You can tell that, or you can tell John is intelligent from the books he reads. Again, it is kind of certain, but it's not speculation now, it's going to be deduction. Your evidence is that, the books. So he has a lot of books with himself. You know that maybe he is intelligent. Okay, and these phrases now, in the future, it's highly likely, it's just likely that cars will be electric, so it just means it's likely, it's possible. I bet, I reckon, I'm quite sure that most films will be made or will be in 3D. Once again, it's possible. There is an outside or there is a slim or there's a good chance that I will be the only applicant. Once again, it just means likely, a good chance. And the last one, there is no way, it's highly unlikely that there is life on Mars, means that it's nearly impossible. Like, you are not very, very sure if it's going to happen or not. So that's unlikely. Okay? So I'm gonna stop now. If you do have any questions, just ask. Yeah, okay. So if you don't have any questions, let's now continue and check section two, cleft sentences. So cleft sentences, why do we use them? Of course, so you can answer it very easily. We use cleft sentences to correct information, to point out information, and to emphasize information. Okay? And what is a focusing phrase in a cleft sentence? A focusing phrase in cleft sentences is a phrase we put at the beginning of the sentence and end it with be. Example, what kills me is your, focusing phrase, okay? The most important thing you can do is, once again, so all of it becomes the focusing phrase. Okay, where do we put the information we focus on? So let's see. Focused information is the part of the sentence that is emphasized for the listener or the reader. It usually comes after the verb be in the it clause or in the WH clause. Example, it was you who invited me to the party yesterday. The focused information is you. So the focus is on you. It was you. And what I like best about going to the cinema is talking about the film afterwards. Now, the focused information is what? Talking about the film afterwards. Okay? And this one becomes your, what do we call that? Focusing phrase. Okay. So, WH clauses or WH cleft sentences, sorry, how to make them. We use a focusing phrase starting with the WH word, like what, who, where, when, why, or how, or which, whatever you have. Except, so what are we not using actually? Except, we are using it, sorry, but except what? All of these other ones, like who, where, when, why, how, which, whatever you have, they are considered informal. So they're not very formal. What is okay, but the other ones are not, okay? So just remember that. Example for the formal ones. What Jenny wanted is 2 baskets of apples, right? And what happened is that Putin invaded Ukraine. What happened is, okay, what happened is that Putin invaded Ukraine. Okay, continuing. So, what about the structure of WH cleft sentences? So the structure is very easy. First, you have a WH word, which is of course going to be what most of the time. Then you have a noun if it's needed, if you do need an actual extra subject. If you don't, so of course your WH word becomes the subject, okay? And then you have a verb phrase that is going to be connected to the subject, like suggested, went wrong is amazing. And then you have a be verb, which is going to end your focusing phrase, like was, is, are, were, whatever you want to say. And at the end, sorry, where did we go? And at the end, you're going to have that, you know, information that you focused on, right? Yeah. So information that you focused on, for example, out of the question or whatever. Okay, starting with the first one. What she suggested was out of the question. What went wrong was that Sheila got involved. And what is amazing is that nobody found out. All of them are really good WH clef sentences. Okay, so WH clef sentences, there's a tip now about it. Be can be plural if what follows it is plural. Now, this is a really good way to just tell you. If you say what patients demand is better hospitals, or if you check hospitals and see, okay, it has an S, so why am I not using a plural verbs? It's okay, you can do it. You can also say what patients demand are better hospitals. But this one is just okay. Like if you say is, no one is going to stop you and say that you're wrong, okay? Because that is the more common one and it's now accepted as the correct way. Or is also okay. Okay. In informal speech, we can also use where, when, why, how in the WH cleft structure. Example, where I was born is London. How I feel is angry. Why I left was to get a job, and many more, of course. So these sentences are there. And cleft sentences, some other techniques before we go to the it cleft sentences. So you can start cleft sentences with all, the word all. For example, all James wanted was a new PC. You can have cleft sentences with phrases like, the first thing, the main thing, and continuing. For example, the main thing to remember is to lock the doors when you leave. You can also have cleft sentences with place where, with time when, and with reason why. That can replace the WH words like where and when, why, and omitting the WH words entirely is also okay, like completely removing it without even bringing that is also correct. Example, the place where John F. Kennedy was assassinated is now a bank. You can also say that, the place that John F. Kennedy was assassinated is now a bank. And even if you don't like it, just remove it and say the place John F. Kennedy was assassinated is now a bank. That is also entirely okay. So what about it cleft? It cleft sentences, guys, how do you make them? We use a focusing phrase is starting with it. Okay, so that's what we call it cleft sentences. And it again is going to end in be. Okay. And example, it was the US that helped the previous government build its bridges and streets. So it was becomes your, it cleft. It becomes your focusing phrase. Okay, all of it is the it cleft. Another one, it's always been the Afghans who create the problems. Some sentences that I do have here. Okay, been. It's been. Now, this is the other focusing phrase. It starts with it, ends with be. Okay, what about, structure for the it cleft? Now, of course, at first you have it itself, and then you can have the be verb. So, kind of, this is very easy, I think. But then you have the information that you focus on. Okay, so it can be the noun, it can be a place, it can be a time phrase, like technology, the weekend already, working all day, and stuff like that. And after that, you can have a that clause, you can have a which clause, or you can have a when clause, depending on what you need. Example, it is technology that is causing increased shyness. It was the weekend already when she got back to me. When clause. It is working all day for nothing, which gets me down. A which clause. And it is only in big cities that smog is a problem, and now it's that clause again. Okay? So let's finish this one as well. It cleft sentences, guys, has two common expressions as well. One of them is it is or it was not until blank 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 that blank blank blank, or blah 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 if you want to say it. It was not until Qudus came home that his mom calmed down and stopped worrying. Okay? And another very common phrase using the it cleft is it is or it was only when blah 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 that blah blah blah. Okay? It is only when you work hard that you realize how hard life is. So these two are very, very common ways of using the it cleft. So there are two common expressions. Making just one or two, examples will 100% help you learn them. Okay. And we are done. If you do have any questions, just raise your hand and ask.